I've got to tell you this, Ethan. So, you know my story. In 2006, I lost my beautiful son, Matthew, to a bad choice. He played a dangerous game that he heard about at school. So it took my life down a completely different path and in a completely different direction, the direction of purpose, and how I could use what I've learned from surfing to empower other young people, and not just young people, but to empower people to make better choices, and how people can connect with each other at a deeply emotional level, because disconnection is a big problem in our society, and poor choice is a big problem in our society. Those are two fundamental social problems. 1 million Americans die every year, preventable deaths from making a bad choice. Traffic accidents, homicide, illicit drugs, suicide, and a lot of kids die too. Uh, so, because of what happened to me, and I started writing books about it, and I wrote my Surface Code card, which you've seen.
Yeah.
And now I get millions of people around the world. They write their own code. They write their own path. Surface Code was 12 lines, every line beginning with "I will," and it was the fundamental lessons that surfing had taught me about life. Like I will always paddle back out. I'll never fight a riptide. And now I get people to write their own codes and share them, and it brings people together at schools, universities, Fortune 500 companies, prisons, rehab clinics, sports teams, SEAL teams, all of them.
That's what struck with me. I remember either you told the story or somebody close to you told the story about a prisoner when you were speaking at a prison
Yeah.
who talked about the code saying, I will forgive myself.
Geez, you got a good memory. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And I remember, like you said, the impact that it had on not just him, but all the other prisoners. And
Yeah,
it was such
he
a
started
positive thing.
crying. He was a
Yeah.
big, holly, tough guy. And to
Yeah.
show that vulnerability in a prison, and start crying. And then I'm looking around going, what are all the other inmates going to do? And they all started crying and all came around and hugged him. So it was an amazing moment where you could see how powerful words are. Because suddenly this guy, maybe he's had this weight on his shoulders for who
Yeah.
knows how long. And finally he can like verbalize it, and then bring all these people together around him to support him.
You know, we were watching Sing Sing, which is a movie you should see, Sean, if you haven't seen it. And
No, I
I was
haven't.
telling, yeah, it's beautiful. And I was telling my family that story about you speaking in a prison and how your code came into play and the the purpose of having a code of conduct on what that can do for the way humans carry themselves and how important that can be and what a factor that can be in how someone lives. It all kind of came into play in that moment, which was really special. And I know that one from the I Will Always Paddle Back Out. Now, that sounds simple to the casual listener, but I know that comes from getting crushed at Waimea Bay, where you were like,
Exactly.
and you thought you broke your back.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, do I go back? And I remember you said something like, the set was it. The first wave of the set crushes you, and you can get knocked out. You can get punched pretty hard there. And you were thinking, like, can I get some air before the set? I have 22 seconds basically before the next wave. Can I get some air? And you're like, you're sitting there, like, wondering if you broke your back. I can't feel my legs. There's something
Yeah, no,
tremendously
it
gutsy.
was it was a it was a it was a terrible wipeout. But everyone has these huge challenges and wipeouts in their life.
Yeah,
And it's kind of like the world is in a bit of a wipeout stage right now, but you got to maintain the hope. You got to
right.
maintain that knowledge that that the sun will rise tomorrow. And like you mentioned my mom and dad, Ethan. They were both hopeful people. They both had terrible tragedies in their lives. My mom was bombed for 4 years, 3,600 air raids on the island of Malta, the most heavily bombed place in the history of the world. And came out of there, and eventually was evacuated, ended up in South Africa, met my dad. But she was always a very hopeful and a prayerful woman. She was, my mom would pray, like she would say, like, God's like a good neighbor. You knock on the door and he's always at home. And, you knock on the door with prayer and he's always at home. And then my dad, with this terrible shark attack that he had, but still never lost the love for the ocean, and taught me how to swim and surf like 100 yards away from where he'd had this terrible attack, and then impacted so many other lives with, helping so many other surfers. And then, me, after my terrible loss, um, it took me a while, but I still maintain the hope. And today, I live a very hopeful, optimistic life and helping, and I think empowering millions of people. Just write your code. It's so simple, 15 minutes, 12 lines. Every line begins with I will. And anyone that wants to can just go to my website. It's ShaunTomson.com. You download a worksheet and you write it as a family, or you write it as a business group, or you write it as a sports team. It's free. All it is, surfing gave it to me. Surfing gave me the surface code, and I just try to give it back to many people, because the world does need help, and the world needs a way that we can connect with one another. You know what I mean? How can we connect with one another? And like you tell that story about the inmates. Now, these are separate guys, and through this guy, through what he wrote, now they've all come together. And it's no different to when I do it like for a Fortune 500 company, because so many people in large corporations, the sort of business speak word, they call it disengaged. And it's like 79% of employees around the world are disengaged. That means they're not connected to their fellow employees, they're not connected to the workplace, and they're not connected to the mission of the company you work with. So I really do my best, I'm telling you, Ethan, to
Yeah.
bring people together. And I ask people right at the beginning of my presentation, I go, text me a word that describes how you're feeling. And they text me a word, and I form a word cloud. You know what a word cloud is? The more frequent words are larger. So on the screen, you can see what everyone's feeling. You can see all the words, but the popular words are larger. And I started doing it in COVID, and the words have been stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection. I call it a sad mindset. How gnarly is that? And then I talk about how the code developed. I tell 3 surfing stories. I tell the story about the big wipeout, about I'll always paddle back out, about resilience and perseverance. I tell a story about surfing Banzai Pipeline, the most dangerous wave in the world, about courage and commitment. And then I tell a beautiful story, and you've heard me talk about it before, about the sacred story stone and the sacred story circle, connecting deeply with my son on the beach. And then I ask people, everyone writes their code, 12 lines. Every line begins with I will, 15 minutes. And then people share their code. And they either share it by standing up and reading it, or else they text it to me and it comes across the screen. And this is what I found. And I think this is pertinent to anyone that's listening. The fundamental purpose of our lives is identified by 2 lines of code that everyone writes. Everyone on this planet that I've ever done this exercise with has written this. Half of our life purpose is I will be better. We want to be better today than we were yesterday. We want to be a better dad. We want to be kinder. We want to spend more time with our children. We want to live a life of integrity. That's one half. The other half is I will help others be better. I will be a leader. I'll be a volunteer. I'll be a mentor. I will lift others up when they're down. Okay, so now you've got the negative words. You've got the stories. People have written their code. Now they've shared their code. And then I ask them, text me a word that you're taking home with you. One word. And you know what the 2 words are? Hope and purpose.
I was going to guess hope.
Yeah.
Hope and purpose. Do you think that code pulled you through, maybe even saved your life? Article 2 of that code, the I will paddle back out. Do you think the blast at Waimea, where you had to like dig deep and like overcome what could have been like a deadly situation to get back out there, do you think that somehow pulled you through darker times ahead?
I think it did. And it's interesting, you know, that simple line, I will always paddle back out. Yes, you know, at a first glance, it's about resilience and perseverance. You know, you get thumped, you get back on the horse, you fall down, you get up. But at a deeper level, I think it's about hope, because only by paddling out can you get the next one. And, you know, I often think that every time a surfer paddles out, you know, you have that open horizon in front of you, and you're paddling out, with hope, because you think you're going to get that wave, and you don't know whether you're going to get it or not, but you're certainly driven by the hopeful aspect of it. And you know, something else that has helped me as well. You know, I restarted my brand instinct
Yeah.
just restarted it a couple of months ago. And it's wonderful to, to have in the shops. We're in about 100 shops, and it's the world's first social purpose surfwear brand, because I want to tie it to my movement of how can I create a positive wave of hope and purpose around the world. But I had a meeting this morning with our designer. He's a great guy. And 2 years ago, he lost his beautiful 15-year-old son in an e-bike accident. And, we were talking about grief and, how do you move forward? And yes, those words that I wrote, always paddle back out are very important to me: resilience, perseverance, and hope. But 2 hours before my son died, he read to me. He was in South Africa. He read me an essay that he had written at the school. He was at my old school just for one semester. And he wrote these words. He wrote a beautiful essay about tube riding, which is what I was very well known for in surfing. I developed a new technique for riding inside the tube. But he wrote these words: "The light shines ahead." And for me, those words have sort of become like a mantra, and they're just words of hope, and they're words about moving forward, and they're words of not looking over your shoulder. They're very important words to me. And I've come to understand that words have got great power. They've got unbelievable power to influence and inspire. And what I have come to know, that the words with the greatest power of all are our own words. That's why when I see people write the codes, it's power.
Yeah.
It's not my power. I just have shown a framework. People put their power into those words.
I used that in an interview last year and credited your son. We were talking to at a children's hospital event, talking to I get kind of emotional thinking about it, but the parents who were living in such terror and uncertainty. And I said, I don't, I don't know how this happened, but I was just talking to them about the importance of staying positive and working towards, staying in the game, or as you would say, paddle back out, like stay in the fight. Let science catch up to where we are. Just stay in it, stay alive. And I ended it with that very saying: "The light shines ahead." And afterwards, one of the reps from the children's hospital says, "That was beautiful. Where'd you get that?" And I said, "Well, that actually comes from Shaun Tomson's son. I can't even take credit for it." The one thing I say that I was like that, and it just stuck with us. It just was one of those things that he said to him in a poem. I thought it was a poem at the time.
It was almost like prose poem. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
beautiful.
And I said it just stuck with us because it sounded so determined and positive, like the light shines ahead.
No,
And it just, oh,
they're beautiful words. Actually, I did an event for hospice in Santa Barbara, and I called the presentation "The Light Shines Ahead" because
yeah,
those people, are going through a tough time there. It's definitely a time for courage, resilience, hope, and hope and optimism. But the simple process, it's so powerful, Ethan, and it's so real, it's authentic. There's no BS. When people write it, they write the most amazing, they might write the most amazing words. It's really it's so inspiring to me. When I'm like, I stand there, and if it's a small group like under 50 and people stand up and they read their codes, it's
yeah,
like a lot of them cry when they do it, because it's so emotional. It's so emotionally, you're so vulnerable. It's like you're naked, but everyone is connected because everyone's pulling for you. Everyone is like just listening to those words, and behind every line there's a story. I don't know the story, but if it's a company, everyone knows the story. Like when a person says like, "I will forgive," or "I will be kinder," um, they know the backstory. So
yeah.
it's super connective, and it's a beautiful. And anyone that's listening, I really encourage you to do it. It's a wonderful process. And if you want to go to my website, you can watch one of my videos to just get a bit of context. There's a really good video I did for the Rotterdam School of Management, and it's 32 minutes, and then you've got 15 minutes writing your code. So it's like, and then you can share it with your family. It's a beautiful thing. Just spend 60 minutes. Turn off Instagram, turn off Snapchat, Facebook, whatever, X, and just Spend time on yourself and your family for 60 minutes. It's simple, it's beautiful, it's free, it
Yeah.
doesn't cost you anything other than the time investment.
Is this okay? Hi, my name is David Pasquesi. You may recognize me from television program or motion picture, or not. NMOSD is a central nervous system disorder, and it's pretty brutal. You can help. Go to GuthyJacksonFoundation.org and donate today to help them find a cure. GuthyJacksonFoundation.org.